Iron Man 3, Iron Man. Iron Man 1 is still the best Iron Man. Iron Man 1 was Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was my favorite before Infinity War. Spoiler alert. Anything. Infinity War is winning over everything. What up, though? Roddy Rod, the big business. You know what it is. Checked out everything great about Avengers Infinity War Part 1. Now it's time for numero dos. And this is like just as long as the first one, and I thought the movie was just about done, but no, we are at the Thanos, the moon. No, he already threw the moon. We're at the him versus Doctor Strange part, right? So let's go. Well, because he still does a summary at the end, so yeah, I get it. This is gonna be good, man. My glove. Fuck it, it's over there. Wait, no. You have been warned. Wait, no, that's from something. Never mind. Okay. That for a drop of blood.
And this is what I was talking about, feeling uneasy about Thanos. He's just unrelenting. Nothing Tony does even slows him down. Leading to... Snap, that's brutal. Gotta give Iron Man props for holding his own as long as he did.
Yeah, my respects, Doc.
Sincerity. Genuine sincerity that makes me respect him even more.
I hope
I remember you.
Coolest hiding place ever.
Did we just lose?
Chills.
Yeah, we're as surprised as you. It's not like it's your fault or anything. Okay, I quickly want to talk about how fantastic this finale is structured. 3 separate but equally pivotal and almost equally as exciting battles going on. And it's always kept so clear because of the starkly different color palettes. Yellow, orange, and bright light make up the battle on Titan. Forging the hammer is blue, black, and dark gray.
They said that.
Wakanda is green and has its own epic scale
in the commentary.
Massive wide shots. And then by the end, they all converge with both Thor and Thanos coming to Wakanda.
Right. Right?
Badass bad guy. And this score. Balance of
The score.
slow gliding of
Outdid yourself, B.
It's as if Thanos' mere entrance has an effect on the weather.
It's alright. You could never hurt me. I just feel here.
Paul Bettany killing me per usual. This epic showdown, the one we've all been waiting for, is mostly muted to bring in the score and have it be primarily a quiet moment between 2 people who love each other, collectively doing the most painful things they can imagine to each other in order to save the universe. Even the most powerful being in the universe is still moved by Cap's open the gauntlet for a few seconds. And then Wanda starts pulling double duty, literally holding back 5 out of 6 Infinity Stones, which makes sense since her powers came from the Mind Gem, all while the score sneakily turns triumphant.
No, there's no time at all.
Woo.
We knew it had to happen. We just saw him get the Time Stone. Doesn't make it any less heartbreaking.
Bam!
Chest breaker! Storm stabber!
Bruh. You died.
Die.
For that. Call back.
7th birthday is always a win.
Call back.
I've gone for the hand.
So the first time I saw that,
Now we get to the river. The flap was turning back.
I missed. I'm like, what happened?
The axe, the river is the snap. The silent ending, the subversion of expectation, the cliche dodge. An epic moment for tragic storytelling.
Hearts
It's
drops.
heartbreaking, but somehow perfect and earned.
Give him the win.
No.
Just playing Stormbreaker, he'll be fine. Rocket's response is still gut-wrenching. The one snap victim that actually seems to welcome it, and why shouldn't she after all that?
I don't feel so good. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Spirit, please.
Oh man, that'll rip your guts right out. And if you're wondering why it takes a little longer, some combination of Spidey sense to know it's coming and how strong Spider-Man actually is to hold off because he's scared. Which tears me apart, especially after this just happened like yesterday. Adventure. That look of excitement quickly squashed by the realization of what that actually means and the danger that they're about to encounter. Not to mention it coming from the closest thing he has to a father. And on the other side, Tony admitting his dream to Pepper about wanting children while in the back of his mind always feeling like he had a chance to be a father to Peter. To teach him, to love him, to protect him. This may feel like gratuitous emotional manipulation, but this is the culmination of Peter and Tony's story, where they both acknowledge each other's importance and the love they share, even though they're both powerless to stop the inevitable. I just want to point out how insane it is that this trailer shot is post-snap.
Right.
Okay. Of course, Steve is going to fall back on the thing he knows and believes. Though, it's not lost on me that Loki's decree lost a lot of its sting. I guess Thanos is going to farm after all.
Woo!
What? Direct quote from Julia the other night. She was mad. She was mad for a while. Mostly about Gamora. So mad that it took me a few hours to get her to admit that this was a great movie. What I really loved about her response is that throughout the movie she kept saying things like, "This is dumb, he's unbeatable, it's not realistic that they can beat him." But obviously they are. Fun isn't something one considers when knowing a movie's ending while watching it with one's friends. But this does put a smile on my face.
Right.
I don't care, it's 2018. The trailers are part of the movie-going experience now.
Right.
But ending on our
It wasn't even in the movie.
enjoying that sun rising on a grateful universe was 100% absolutely perfect. You probably noticed I used this title card for the intro, and that's because, come on, soul-crushing, just like this movie is. Well, disintegration censoring.
Oh, we're still in the
That's
movie.
like the icing on a cake I didn't want, but hot dang do I love
You
it.
didn't get to the breakdown
You
yet.
know who I envy? Kids. That's a bit much. I mean, kids being born, like right now. They're going to be able to watch the entirety of the MCU from beginning to end for the first time, all right in a row. It'll take them months to get through it, but still, I can't wait for Jude to experience it. That said, I think one of this movie's biggest strengths is that you don't need to sit through dozens of hours of film if you just want to skip to the end. Obviously, I've seen them all, but I'm pretty confident you could easily follow along and enjoy yourself, even if this was your first MCU movie. I don't know why you do that, but I'm sure it happened. They found a great balance between explaining the important pieces of the backstory while not retreading things we already know. None of the heroes get reintroduced, but each of their personalities comes through, mostly. And you still get a feel for what their part is in the larger story. Hey, how much video? Speaking of those characters, let's get this out of the way. Spoilers, I guess, if you're not following the marketing around the MCU, but obviously any characters with scheduled sequels are probably not dead. That doesn't really bother me. Characters die and come back in comics all the time. My only complaint right now is that there's nothing slated to take place between Avengers 3 and 4. I'm really hoping Captain Marvel either jumps back and forth from the 90s or at least spends some time post-snap, beyond just the post-credit stinger. Maybe there's a movie they haven't announced yet. Let us live in this forever-changed world for just a little bit before you undo it. Maybe it's too difficult to pretend that half of all life in the universe is gone. I don't know. But heck, do smaller stories that lead up to Avengers 4 in meaningful ways. It doesn't look like that's happening, so I'm sure we'll at least have the first half of Avengers 4, if not more, to live in Thanos' grateful universe, hopefully with a solid gap between films. Beyond that, I have only the tiniest nitpicky complaints. If I had to stretch, sometimes the Wakanda battle gets a little chaotic and mind-numbing. The CGI red shirt villains, yes, the Black Order from the comics, who are never mentioned prior on screen, felt a tad out of place with the rest of the film. It's just a pretty serious movie. Thanos is a serious dude. The movie also occasionally struggles to mix that serious, dark, deadly, world-ending tone with the general comedic feeling of the established MCU.
I disagree. I disagree on that.
He may be on the team, I don't know. I haven't been there in a while.
Either way, they ventured into new territory and still kept the upbeat, somewhat goofy tone of the Avengers we've come to enjoy. And that's it.
Magic with a kick.
Gun to my head, a few character decisions annoyed me, and there were other tiny moments that felt a tad forced. Otherwise, I loved every second of this film. The Russos, together with screenwriters Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, gave us just enough of each character to feel satisfied but still want so much more. Captain America falls into so much more territory, as does Black Widow and a few others. But I believe there's a reason for it. I can't get into it too much without potentially spoiling stuff for those who just want to go along for the ride with these movies. I made a short companion video that talks about my theories and spoilers because I know you guys are curious what I think, and I'm curious what you guys think as well. Anyway, the combination of characters was flawless. They all played perfectly off each other. Groups are kept small enough that nothing ever gets too out of hand while still acknowledging who the key players are. I'm sure there were some people clamoring for more Wong or Mantis, but the majority got to see who they wanted. Even poor Heimdall got a moment to shine. Which reminds me, Idris Elba is still always a win. Something I really enjoyed is how crazy powered up Iron Man is with his nanosuit. If you thought he was invincible before,
You front honeymoon at me, and I'm gonna lose it.
there's almost nothing he can't do anymore. He's basically Green Lantern. I talked a little more about that in my theory video. Either way, I love it. I love the sonic guns and the magnetic boot clamp and the rocket fists and laser arm thingy. And anyone claiming Robert Downey Jr. phoned this performance in is wrong. I want to be mean, but I won't. That's just hater talk. He left it all in the field, every moment. He's a contender for, let's say, second MVP, but honestly, I couldn't make a decision between Downey, Evans, Hemsworth, Saldana, Olsen, Bettany, Cumberbatch, Holland. Thor and Rocket had a great dynamic as well.
Yeah,
They managed to make this quieter moment just as compelling as the action-filled ones. Hemsworth is a perfect example of blending serious with
They all killed it, man.
That's the total on Asgard.
They all brought it.
Side note, the fact that Thor calls Groot Tree since he actually speaks the language and hears more than just I am Groot.
Oh, by the way, this is a friend of mine from Tree.
Oh man, but it's the comedic and absurd. Everyone I know is dead. With genuine heartbreaking emotion, everyone I know is dead. I'm ready to fight. He guts me and then makes me laugh in the span of a few seconds.
Well, he's never fought me.
Yeah, he has.
We never fought me twice.
Well, if I'm wrong, then...
Oh, I want to watch it again.
That's not to say they don't get one of the most epic moments in the movie.
The most.
My theater clapped, though. If I'm being honest, I still prefer Thor's entrance on the bridge in Ragnarok, but we've been with these characters for so long.
My theater clapped the first 3 times I saw the movie.
And as Thor, for an example, I saw every loss he endured throughout this series. So when he Jeremy jams Stormbreaker into Thanos' chest, I'm right there with him, just irrationally yelling, yeah, make that boat suffer! But let's talk about our MVP. Let's talk about how astounding his CGI is, how amazingly Josh Brolin's mocap comes through in every grimace, every pained look. He's a villain that's not out to get our heroes. In fact, he barely cares about them at all. He's on a mission that has nothing to do with them. I love me some Killmonger and OG Loki, but Thanos, you don't hate him. I mean, you do hate him, but he's just doing what he thinks is right after watching his world come crashing down. It doesn't really matter how faulty or evil his plan is because he makes you believe it, or at least believe that he believes it. He's not just mad at the world, he wants balance.
As all things should be.
And while he has a history of brutally murdering people, he wants to create that balance as quickly and painlessly as possible. Because of the divisiveness of this movie, I feel I should add the disclaimer that while I called him the hero, it was said tongue-in-cheek because even though he's the protagonist, he's a very bad man. One of the things that makes him so terrifying, yet somehow endearing, is a moment like this of unrivaled confidence.
You have my respect, Stark.
He's so good, and knows he's so good that he can take a timeout to praise an opponent. Not a typical thing for a supervillain to do. He's also understanding and has empathy to a point.
It's not.
Legends don't redeem his actions, don't understand his motivations, as flawed as his logic is.
Usually they
philosophy shouldn't really
instead of praising him.
What appears to be a spacefaring civilization, but it's one real madmen have used before. A complaint I've heard is why did he wait so long and then get all the stones in a matter of days? Well, I think the answer is in the question. He had to know once he started collecting them, the longer he took, the more likely he'd be stopped.
Yeah,
he didn't want to start until all of them were attainable, and finally knowing the Soul Stone was in reach was his cue to begin.
You said that.
Another question is why not double the universe's resources? And that's because he's not a messiah. I didn't take it like he was trying to save the world. He's trying to fix it so that people will learn their lesson and do better next time. I'm not going to get into whether he's right or wrong because he's just plain wrong. It's a bad plan. That wouldn't work and he'd have to snap his fingers every couple decades. And yes, I've seen MatPat's video, it's cute, but he glosses over a lot of unknowable variables like economical and infrastructural collapse and other even more vital issues that I'm not going to get into here because I don't really care. It's Thanos' resolve that I find intriguing.
What did it cost?
The most impressive thing accomplished was how evenly distributed screen time was with the breakneck pacing of the overall narrative. There are only the briefest of pauses, and the movie starts right away, to the point that Thanos starts with the Power Stone because there's not time to show how he got it from Xandar. You'd think in a 2.5-hour movie there would be some drag, but no. And then the narrative itself. Like I said in the beginning, Thanos is the protagonist. He's the one with the goal that he accomplishes and the one with the biggest loss. I didn't know quite how intentional that was until I listened to the audio commentary. But yeah, it's his story. It becomes clear when you consider that multiple characters were asked to sacrifice something they love.
The director's commentary really
helped.
Only one with the will to act on it.
But let's talk about why this story is so amazing and unique. It's not just that the bad guy won, though well done on that, full stop. But it's that everything in the movie leads to the Avengers overcoming Thanos. Thor's last-minute save with a weapon described as
the Thanos killing kind
was so well set up and then put on the back burner. And that's exactly how you structure a narrative where the good guys win at the last second. His return is set up perfectly to then still fail. And then they went for it. Ended the movie with this universe at its lowest. The look on Cap's face says it all. They've been beaten here and there, but they've never lost on this scale. This movie isn't perfect, and it's not necessarily a masterpiece. The Russo's best work? Yeah, probably. Best MCU film? Matter of preference, but maybe. It won't leave you warm and fuzzy like most, but it is an achievement that's never been even attempted on this scale, and it really shouldn't have worked. And yet every story weaves in and out of every other story, all tying back together and intertwining in logically
so beautiful
ways. And permanently. Thor's hammer now forever has a groove handle. They wrote a third-act movie that has a self-contained story with 3 acts of its own. I'm sure you've heard variations of this type of praise, so here's my addition to the conversation. In Going through it scene by scene, I found myself stopping every few seconds during scenes to note what was happening. Like how Gamora says she hates the throne, so Thanos sits on the steps. Or just simply how you can go through and watch every time Thanos uses the gauntlet and realize the actions always correspond to a particular stone or multiple stones.
Yes.
It's very literally too much to list. But they did not mess around in this movie. So writing all that or just laughing and realizing 267 wins with just me laughing was probably not the best idea. Not to brag, but it's a laugh that's been called fake sounding by literally hundreds of people on here.
Come on, man.
So,
Like in Footloose, the movie?
Exactly like Footloose. Is it still the greatest movie in history?
It never was.
Please get lost, Squidward.
What exactly is it that they do?
Keep names, tag ass.
I'm sorry, I just had a weird laugh. My Patreon supporters that see my scripts can attest that they usually come in at somewhere between 100 and 300 rows on a spreadsheet, whereas this movie was well over 500. The point of all that is how dense and meaningful and fun each sequence is. Each frame,
Damn, dude, you really put some work into these,
the
huh?
best of their abilities or works together with another hero, generally one from a different franchise. That's why this movie is so loved. To the point that you guys actually pointed out stuff I left out, like the opening Marvel logo not having its typical triumphant score, or the amazing score during Gamora's death scene, or this line.
Why was she up there all this time?
And the Sherlock reference that I just couldn't see past Catch Me If You Can. And then the filmmakers crushed us and left us begging for more at the same time. I haven't been this satisfied by a villain's victory since, well, I guess I'd have to spoil other movies to say, so let's just say it's top 3. You can't help but smile through the pain because they freaking did it. Beyond that, it's beautiful. Scratch that. It's absolutely stunning, especially Vormir.
You did that 300.
Epic. He turned another dimension into a black hole. He threw a moon and it didn't come off cheesy or unbelievable. Most importantly, it's fun. Not everyone is going to feel the way I do, but it's a moment in film for a lot of reasons. Alright, I've been prattled enough. If you want to hear me prattle even more, I do have this theory spoiler further gushing video. Somehow I still have more to say. Next week, no way great about video, but I will be finishing that Lessons Animation Taught Us video.
Wait, how many wins did they get? Oh, okay. You have 1, 3.
Avengers being the flavor after you, so darker than him. It's not bad. Good job. Hulk burn fudges are
That's the thing.
That's a thing.
The movie is amazing.